Hello and welcome to episode 286 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, Australians will be given 3 hours of free solar power every day. You don't even have to have solar panels to get it. You could use it for whatever you want, except hurting kangaroos. Please don't hurt kangaroos. I do enjoy a good viral video of kangaroos kicking people.
Yes. California has quietly killed its e-bike voucher program and shifted the funds into a program for clean cars. This is short-sighted as e-bikes can be a far better way to reduce emissions for lower costs. But hey, then you can't be stuck on the freeway for hours a day, and everyone in California loves that so much they just can't give it up.
It's been 10 years since the Paris Climate Accord, and back then, those crazy people trying to save the planet did their best to estimate the progress of renewable energy in the coming decades. Turns out, well, this will be no surprise to anyone listening to the show, but renewables did way better than anyone expected. In fact, it'll shock you like a kangaroo.
Starting this month, parking lots in South Korea will be required by law to install a solar canopy. Said a government spokesperson, the people of Korea profoundly apologize for the disappointing final season of Squid Game. Maybe this will help make up for that debacle.
All that and more on this edition of the Clean Energy Show.
All right, James, let's get into it. It's time to play Jeopardy!
Can I take XYZ abbreviations for 6?
ZEV stands for this type of environmentally friendly transport. Eli.
What's a zero-emission vehicle?
That's correct.
Ah, you got it right.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
We're up to about 20%, I think, for the times we do these, about 20% correct answers for those EV questions.
Well, if I was a contestant on Jeopardy, and believe me, I wouldn't be, I can't even remember my name sometimes, I would be boning up on that. Maybe listening to our podcast would be a good prep for people going on Jeopardy.
It's definitely something they've added into the works.
So last week when we were recording the show, the Leaf was getting repaired at the high school auto shop. And it went in on Monday morning, and it had the ball joints replaced in first period.
Yep.
Shout out to the first period class. I sent you a giant box of Timbit donut holes.
Nice.
In thanks to them, I was so grateful. But then they tried to do the what is it? The control arms? What do you call them?
Yeah,
the tie rods. The tie rods. Yeah, and they couldn't get them off because they were rusted. And they broke 3 of their ratchets and 1 spanner trying to get them off.
Wow.
So I felt bad about that.
Yeah.
So it had to stay in the shop over Tuesday. And by the end of Tuesday, they had used a blowtorch and some unseizing oil to get it off.
Yeah.
And they did. And now I've got a car that drives again respectably well.
Well, I guess that's all part of the learning process, right? Because that's a thing you would encounter if you worked in a garage. Sometimes things are seized and you have to figure out how to get them unstuck.
Although the teacher blamed it on the car coming from Quebec, Canada, because I imported it from there. It said there's a lot more salt on the roads out there. And
yeah,
he said, never buy a car from Quebec. But, he didn't buy an EV is a great place to get it. Quebec is a great place to get an EV if you're living in Canada. It'd be like, somebody in the Midwest United States getting one from California. There's just a lot more of them there, and they've already been, the used price is down because the new price was discounted from various rebates. Colorado would be another great place. But yeah, so they also showed me pictures of the brake calipers, which need replacing. So I'm going to get that done.
Yeah.
Although they got really behind because of our car. So I felt bad about that. But I sent the 5th period class a giant box of donuts as well. So everybody's happy. And the teacher said, hey, the brake pads are really good. And my daughter immediately explained that's because we have regenerative braking. He said, oh, that makes sense. And then he asked to drive it out of the shop because he'd never driven an EV before. So that's always something you want to do when you have an EV is let somebody drive that EV and educate them and get them in a position to ask questions and answer them as best you can. There is a teacher or two there that does have an EV, but that's probably goes there to get their tires changed and whatnot, which I'm also going to do a rotation. I'm going to exploit this the best I can because my daughter's graduating in June. I've only got so much time to make the most of this.
But even with an old EV like that, it's hopefully still a little bit impressive. They're quiet. Yeah. They have lots of power. So hopefully, he enjoyed that. Just a quick interjection about Quebec and about Montreal. I just watched that documentary on Netflix about who killed the Expos. Because we were talking about baseball last week, because, of course, the Blue Jays are in the World Series, and sadly, it ended poorly for us.
Did it? Okay.
But yeah, it sort of sent me to this documentary on Netflix about the Montreal Expos, which sadly went away around 2002. And it goes through the whole sort of details of what happened to that team. I don't know why the Blue Jays were different. You know, there was sort of poor economic circumstances in the 80s that it was part of what led to their downfall. But, you know, for some reason, the Blue Jays in Toronto managed to survive that, and now they're doing incredibly well.
I think some of it has to do with corporate. If you've got a lot of head offices, because, you know, they expand and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars putting up, you know, premium seating for, you know, everybody does that now. All sports do that now to take advantage, because that's where the real money is, not from the average Joe going to the game. It's the exploiting the businesses who want to oppress their clients and stuff like that. It's always tough for Canada because our dollar is less than the U.S. dollar. It's like 2/3 usually. So if you have a sports team paying in American dollars, it's going to be tougher for us.
Well, and one of the things they quoted in this documentary, like through, I think this was in the 80s, was, you know, the Canadian dollar, it sunk to an all-time low of 71 cents, and this was bad for the team. And I looked it up, and of course, right now, the Canadian dollar is at 71 cents.
When we're recording this, it's the day of the New York mayoralty election.
Oh, yeah.
Mayor election. The election of the mayor. And other elections, too. But, of course, Sohran Mamdani, you know, I've never said it out loud before, interestingly enough.
Yeah, not an easy one.
Maybe we'll be saying his name more often now. He's, of course, Mamdani is a socialist with climate policies, and he connects climate action with social and economic affordability. So he's going to do things for climate and have policies for that, but he also wants to make it tied in with affordability, which is a big thing now, at least in North America. You know, politicians, the cost, the post-COVID inflation is still going on. And, you know, that really, of all issues, it's your pocketbook that really gets people to change their votes. So, but if you can a lot of people have been advocating for this, is tying in, you know, if we put up solar, if we put up wind, it will lower your electricity prices.
Yeah.
And people don't get that because they're told by oil interests and fossil politicians that it's going to raise prices. That's what happens right here where we are in Canada. In our part of Canada, the politicians say that exact BS, and it drives me batty. He's also going to focus on renewable energy as a whole and expanding it in the state, or in New York City. There's also green public schools. He wants the public schools to be green. In other words, energy efficient and sustainable. So he's going to refurbish some schools, and anything that's built has to be, and this only makes sense. I mean, climate aside, wouldn't that make sense to use the least amount of energy, because it goes on for decades and decades? Why wouldn't you want to make it not a paper-thin box, but something that holds the energy in?
Yeah, you put some insulation in the walls, you change to LED lighting, and boom, everything is improved. First of all, you put in a heat pump, but it's immediately more comfortable, and guess what? It will save you money in the long run.
And he wants to build lots of housing, which is also a huge issue in North America and many other places of the world. He wants it to be affordable, and I like this, energy efficient. Why not? Because if you have an affordable house and you need to live in it, you want your energy to be affordable. So I did these calculations whenever I got a mortgage on a house, is like, how much is the energy going to be?
Yeah.
When we bought this house, we knew it would be less. So the mortgage payments are a bit higher, but the utility payments are significantly lower. And that makes a big deal. Now, of course, public transit, he wants free public transit. He wants to retrofit 500 public schools, support the Build Public Renewables Act to increase renewable energy generation, and build 200,000 rent-stabilized green homes, which is quite a few, even for New York City, making public buses free, which would encourage people not to drive, assumably. Although that's going to be a tough sell. I think, you know, the tariffs for going to the middle of the city driving will discourage people more than that, because some people will not give up their cars. Once you start, you know, hitting them with a tax to go into the city or a fee, then it becomes problematic. So public buses would be free. We'll see if that actually happens. Do you think that'll happen?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big promise that often doesn't happen.
It seems unlikely, and, the transit system has to be funded somehow, so we'll see.
And of course, he'll oppose new fossil fuel infrastructure as well, which means if you build a building, it has to have a heat pump, which makes perfect sense in New York City.
Yes, and they do have some laws in place like that in New York, as we've talked about previously.
All right, we have a letter from our listener, Glenn, because we talked about climate litigation in Canada, and I was referencing a news site that said that this was the first national climate litigation from our Children's Trust, was essentially the first one to go to court, but it's not, says Glenn. And Glenn took the time, which we thank him for. He's an environmental lawyer and many other things, an activist here in our province, and he did a voice memo for us, which I thought, why not? There's another thing that you people can do who are listening to the show. If you don't want to use SpeakPipe, pick up your phone, record a voicemail, a voice memo, attach it to an email, send it to us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, and let's listen to Glenn because he wanted to clarify some things because he knows a lot about climate litigation.
Hello, James and Brian. It's Glenn right here. I'm a longtime fan of your show. I just wanted to correct some confusion about climate litigation underway here in Saskatchewan and in Canada after I was listening to your latest podcast. You mentioned the federal court case La Rose. This case was commenced in October of 2019. The case was initially struck down on a motion to strike, but was partially overturned on appeal in 2023. The applicants filed amended pleadings in May of 2024, and the parties agreed to go to a hearing, which is now scheduled for October of 2026. So it's not a new court action, but is actually 6 years old, and it's now headed to a hearing on the full merits of the amended application. You also mentioned a court action in Saskatchewan, which was recently struck down in a similar application to strike. But in fact, we have two actions proceeding in Saskatchewan. So the Dykstra case was launched in March of 2023, and it challenges our government-owned utility Sask Power and their ongoing construction of new gas-fired power plants. So this case is a constitutional challenge under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is meant to protect human rights of people in Canada from government action. So that case is arguing that the government, by building new gas generation without carbon capture, that's going to exacerbate dangerous climate change and violate our rights to life, security of person, and equality rights. Now, the case was struck down, but the applicants are considering appealing the decision to the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal, so we're not done yet. The second case we have going, though, was launched just in July of this year, and it's seeking a judicial review of Saskatchewan's decision to refurbish and recertify all coal-fired generators and to run them to 2050. This case is now also facing an application to strike, and there will be a hearing that takes place in Saskatoon on November 10th, 2025, to hear arguments on whether this case should be allowed to proceed. So if any listeners are interested, they could attend at the Court of King's Bench in Saskatoon on November 10th at 10 a.m. to listen to the matter as it's being argued, or to demonstrate outside the courthouse as there may be some media folks present. Finally, I just wanted to let you know there is a new action in Canada that I think could be important. And this one is started by EcoJustice, and they've launched an action against the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, alleging that the CPP Investment Board is breaching its legal duties by subjecting pension contributions to an undue risk of loss from poorly managed climate risk. So in sum, even though the court actions are slow, they are important, especially here in Saskatchewan, where a provincial opposition party doesn't seem interested in opposing ongoing investment in dirty energy. I want to thank you fellas for the great work, and I know that together we're accelerating the transition to clean energy. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn, for all the work you do. Brian, didn't you contribute to one of these cases? Little donation at one time in the past?
Yes, at one time they were asking for donations, and I was able to help, which was
well, there you go.
Great.
You're changing the world. You're changing the world. It's not just a podcast.
Well, as we know, it's concrete actions are the best thing because we tend to get caught up in whining and complaining. But when you can make a concrete action, the problem is it's not easy. In fact, it's really damn hard. Like the fact that these things go through the courts for years and years.
Yeah.
This is tough stuff, but we certainly appreciate Glenn and others for doing it.
And I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel building momentum here on the on the front of legal action. They're learning from cases, and there seems to be some merit to protecting children's futures, which, is a good thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes the courts, seem to disappoint, but the generally speaking, at least here from what I understand in North America and some other countries around the world, that this is proceeding and hopefully will take up. Thanks again, Glenn, for sending that in.
All right. So from California, this is the e-bike voucher program that we've talked about before. It was plagued with some problems, and Electric has an update for us. And unfortunately, the California Air Resources Board has quietly ended this e-bike voucher program, rolling the remaining $17 million of the original $30 million budget into its Clean Cars for All initiative. And they didn't even make an official announcement of this.
That sucks. Why? That's $17 million. You know how many e-bikes I can buy?
Yeah, well,
More than 17.
this is why we like these kind of programs so much, is that you really get more bang for your buck with e-bikes. If you 17 million towards car purchases, boom, like that'll just be gone in seconds. But imagine how many e-bikes you can get. And this is meant for, lower income people to help them get around.
So why stop it? I know it was overwhelmed that everybody, were they disappointed? I mean,
it was
overwhelmed. Who was
overwhelmed.
getting these?
I mean, that could be part of it. I mean, they haven't said because they didn't even make an official announcement, but the system was overwhelmed. There was sort of reports of mismanagement of the program. So maybe they thought, let's just, give up before it gets any worse. But yeah, you could get previously up to $1,000 and as much as $2,500 if you were purchasing cargo or adaptive e-bikes in certain priority communities. These are targeted for lower income people. But yeah, there was years of delays. It finally started in 2024. Their website crashed because there were so many people that wanted this. An estimated 90% of eligible applicants were turned away because of the limited supply of this. So, I guess at least it's going into a clean car program, but yeah, I just don't think you get as good a bang for your buck. And, governments have a role to play, and they can help accelerate the transition to clean energy. And you want to spend that money as efficiently as possible. And yeah, it's too bad this has gone away.
If you can move a person from public transit even to an e-bike, then it's good for them economically because they don't have to worry about, a monthly bus pass or a transit pass. If you take a car off the road, that's good for everyone, not only for pollution, but for traffic, for congestion.
Yeah.
And that's what you want, because you can put a lot more people in cars and a lot more people in e-bikes than you can in cars in the same space. So why not do that? And why not encourage that?
If this is going to work anywhere, California is an amazing place because they have good weather pretty much year round with not a ton of rain. So it's a perfect place to get people onto e-bikes.
And it also improves your health if you don't get run over. If you have good bicycle infrastructure and stay safe, then...
Barring your head getting flattened, it's great for your health.
All right. Well, Brian, here's a story we both love. Many Australians are going to be given 3 hours of free sunshine every day. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Does it mean they're going to part the clouds? Like Mr. Burns is going to part the clouds, do the opposite? No. It's going to be solar power from the grid that is in excess. And we've talked about this before. Once you get a lot of solar power, you start to have too much of it during certain times. And the way that you deal with that will be interesting and creative. Like people talk about creating, hydrogen storage for nighttime use, green hydrogen through electrolysis, certain manufacturing that could take place and increase. Well, they're going to encourage people. What this is really about is encouraging people to use electricity during that time instead of other times. So if you want to charge your EV during this 3 hours every day, and maybe more than 3 hours, you might want to just do it then instead of at night or other times. So the fact that it's free will encourage, I'm sure they'll make money off the whole thing, but giving it away is just a pricing scheme. Like you could lower the price during that time, but this is really getting people's attention by saying it's free. Because, it's hard to understand electricity and energy use, but, if you feel like you could do something for free, then you're going to turn on your dishwasher, your washing machine, whatever you have to do.
And we know from reporting other stories from Australia, they have a problem with too much solar power at certain times of the day. And they've worked on various schemes like battery storage to help with this. But this is further indication that they're still trying to deal with this excess solar.
So if you can do this during the solar excesses, then you don't have to burn as much coal, and coal is expensive. You have to, actually burn something, whereas the sun just hits solar and that happens. And if the problem is, if you have too much solar, it's not like, the world blows up. It's just that it's not economical anymore because you have to mitigate it. You have to turn it off. And basically you're paid for that to make all that money during that time of day. And it becomes less economical if you're an investor, a private company putting up these large solar installations. Australia is launching a solar sharer program, which gives at least 3 hours of solar per day, even if you don't have solar panels. It starts July of next year in New South Wales, Southeast Queensland, and South Australia. And it may expand in 2027, too, to other places. It applies to homes with smart meters. That is most households in Australia. And people can run washing machines, dishwashers, air conditioning. You can bring down the temperature of your house during that time. Why not? See, if I worked at an office all day and it was summer and hot, I might, whenever this is, like 11 till 1 or 11 to 2 in the day, I would just take my app and turn on the air conditioner and get that temperature down because it'd be free.
Yeah.
I love free. You know me. So the goal is to shift power use to midday when solar is abundant and cheap instead of the evening peaks when you get home from work. So if you got home from work, maybe the house was a few degrees cooler and maybe it rose up a little bit late afternoon. You get home, it's the perfect temperature. And you didn't have to pay anything to get it to that from that point up to that point. So as far as cooling goes, the reverse could be true for heating as well. You could have your home preheated by the time you come home if you use sunshine. So it helps reduce grid stress and lowers power bills because, the middle of the day, industry is using electricity, but people less so.
Yeah.
Office buildings and such are using it, but less so at home. That helps lower power bills and avoid costly upgrades to the utilities to deal with that. We're always talking about that aspect. And Chris Bowen, the energy minister, says it ensures every last ray of sunshine powers homes instead of going to waste. So that's what you want to do. And this is going to be a problem elsewhere, but Australia's at the forefront of this. They've got so much solar because of the market there and the long season for it. It's not that seasonal because it's closer to the equator.
Yeah, and as we've covered before, the electricity prices in Australia tend to be on the high side compared to, say, us here in Canada. So I think people will be quite excited to have that opportunity for some free power in the day.
And Bowen says it proves what's good for the planet is good for your pocket, which I like. I think that's a lot of people need to be told that and educated on that because they're educated in the wrong direction on the fact that, quote unquote, windmills are expensive and they kill birds. Regulator oversight will ensure fair pricing outside of free hours. And energy retailers also already offer similar deals, but industry group AEC complains about the lack of consultation. Of course they do. Smart Energy Council calls it good news, free power because the sun doesn't send you a bill. That is true, Brian. We have solar panels on the roof, and not once have I got a bill from the sun.
Yeah.
I check my mailbox daily, and nothing.
Nothing. And speaking of solar, we have more solar news. This is from Electrek about solar parking lots in Korea. This is another thing we love here at the Clean Energy Show. Starting this month, parking lots in South Korea with more than 80 spaces will be required to install solar canopies and carports. And this law doesn't just apply to new construction, because we've heard about some rules and regulations like that applying only to new construction of parking lots, but this is existing parking lots as well with more than 80 spaces. So these shaded structures will protect vehicles from heavy rain, snow, blistering summer sun. They'll keep your car cooler. They can help extend the life of plastics and upholstery, and even preserve battery range in EVs and PHEVs by reducing their AC loads. Of course, they can charge while they're parked. I absolutely love this idea. I love the idea of carports in general. My house has a carport. They were sort of a cool design feature in the 1960s. I think we talked about this before. Carports were invented by Frank Lloyd Wright, the famous architect.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
So, a garage is often overkill, but yeah, this really makes sense in so many places, but places with extreme weather like ours, because this is absolutely a problem. Like our cars in the summer, they get absolutely baked in the sun.
They do.
My Teslas have a overheat protection, so you can set it to kick in at like 35 degrees Celsius so that your car doesn't get like insanely hot.
I'm surprised it's that low, actually. I thought it would be like 50 or something.
You can change it to, I think, 30. I think I usually have it set at 35. But yeah, if it's got to sit outside in the sunshine, our summer, sunshine is crazy, crazy hot. And then, of course, if you can protect it in the winter, the best thing about my carport at my house is you don't get frost on the windows. Here in the winter, if your car has to be parked out in the open, you have to scrape the frost off your windows in the morning. Yeah. And with a carport, you don't get that.
By the way, we normally would have done that about 30 times this year at this point of the year. Yeah. For those of us without a carport. It's only one time so far. It's weird. The climate is changing. Yes. At least the weather this year is changing for sure.
Yeah. We usually get snow by Halloween, but this year we haven't.
Yeah. So they're applying it retroactively to existing facilities. That's about 3,000 lots and 2 to 3 gigawatts of new solar that will energy will come out of this, and it'll power millions of homes with no land needed. Everyone's complaining about land use, which is a bogus argument.
Yeah.
Often it protects the land. They reduces desertification in some places. So lots of good things about it.
We must have like some of the most parking lots per capita where we live. Like everything is a parking lot, and they'll tear a building down in the downtown area and they'll just put up a parking lot, and before you know it, we'll have more parking lots than buildings down there.
Well, Brian, it's the busy time of the year for our show. I always find that there's this time of year, I'm sometimes doing it 7 days a week because there's so much news going on and promoting the podcast on social media. But because it's around the time of the COP meeting is about to begin, COP 30 in Brazil. But 10 years ago now was the one in Paris where they came to an accord, the Paris Climate Accord. This is from Sustainability Online. And at that time, they had to predict, well, what can clean energy do to help the climate? What can we expect and what can we possibly do to make it expand? So they came up with some predictions of what that would be. And of course, they underestimated. Everything has been underestimated. That's an ongoing story. Even to this day, things tend to be underestimated. The acceleration of the green energy sector has outpaced the expectations of the Paris Agreement. A new report by the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit, ECIU, has said the report, 10 years post-Paris, said that the clean energy transition has advanced far beyond what was predicted a decade ago, with cautious or even skeptical forecasts made in the Paris Agreement proven way, way wrong. And we know that happens all the time. But let's have a look, because I find this kind of curious. And by the way, I like this week's show. There's a lot of shows lately where I have been a little bit blue because there hasn't been a lot of stories that get me excited. But I like the stories we're covering this week a lot, just so you know. Yeah, so as an example, solar installations in 2024 stood at 550 gigawatts on a global level. And that was outpacing the 2015 International Energy Agency forecasts by more than 200%. I thought you might laugh. It's actually 1,500%. 1,500% more than they predicted. That's insane.
Yeah.
It just goes to show it's new, the economics, the manufacturing, the automation in the manufacturing, the efficiencies, the fierce competitiveness of Chinese manufacturers between each other has really dropped, and the desire to have it. Once the economics kick in, this is what happens. They have 1,500% more than they predicted we would have last year. So a 2015 energy outlook from BP, British Petroleum, anticipated that the global non-fossil fuel share of power generation would rise from 32% at the time, a lot of that was nuclear and hydro, to a whopping 38% by the end of 2035, 10 years from now. They predicted it would leap 6% to 38% of power share in the world at the end of 2035. Well, yeah, that didn't work out. Last year, not 2035, last year, it accounted for 41% of the global power supply.
Yeah.
not 38. So it's already surpassed it 20 years in advance. It surpassed it by 3% 20 years sooner than they expected. So that's just a complete bogus thing. And I think if you asked us, we would have said that all this was probably going to happen, because the things that we were reading at the time all pointed in this direction. But, it's hard to make these predictions if you have to count on them. But of course, the IEA and BP were very conservative and maybe biased at the time as well. So what will it be in 2035? Don't ask BP. This is what it actually will be in 2035. EV adoption. Well, EV adoption is more than 40% higher than the 2015 projection. So we talk about EVs. Oh, no one wants EVs. The EV transition is going slow.
Yeah.
Well, it's 40% higher than they predicted in 2015. It's on track to be 66% higher than what they predicted for 2030. And my guess is that it'll be more than 66%, because we're hitting a critical point here with low-cost Chinese EVs flooding the world, including the global south. The report reads, there will always be doubters claiming the transition can't be done, or that their country's share of emissions is only 1%. I'm looking at you, Canada.
Yeah.
But this shift is accelerating irreversibly and irrefutably. The choice is simple: be a part of it and prosper, or stand aside and watch your influence fade, which is bloody well what's going on where we live in Canada as a whole, but especially here where Brian and I live in Saskatchewan. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. We can do better. We should do better. We have to do better in order to accelerate the transition as fast as possible, because this is, in a way, low-hanging fruit when it comes to the global climate crisis. We need to, get the power sector decarbonized, get transportation decarbonized as fast as possible and accelerate it. And hopefully economics and some efforts by policymakers and governments around the world will help that take place.
And with further news about the decarbonization of transportation, we have another story here from Electrek and a story about Japan. Kia was not previously selling cars in Japan. And apparently foreign automakers always have a tough time entering the Japanese market. The major Japanese brands hold something like 90% of the market. Buyers are very loyal to those Japanese makers in the Japanese market.
And why wouldn't you? They're the best cars on the planet. You're making the best quality, and they come from your country. There's that national pride. So if, I bought Japanese cars, and I don't live in Japan, so I understand.
Yeah. No, when I was, back in the 80s, I started buying Japanese cars. I love them. They definitely seem to be the best at the time. But as we frequently report here on the Clean Energy Show, those same Japanese automakers have been very, very slow to transition to electric vehicles. So Kia saw a bit of an opening here, and they are planning to move into the Japanese market. And they're going to start with the PV5. This is an electric van. It looks like a sort of a minivan-sized kind of vehicle. There's also like a cargo version of this. And yeah, they think maybe there's an opening here to squeeze in before the Japanese automakers really crank up their EV production and perhaps capitalize on the new regulations in Japan. They do have some rules now. The government policy is to convert 30% of new car sales to EVs by 2030, which is a fairly slow and conservative target, I think. But this is going to help create more demand for EVs in Japan, and Kia wants to capitalize on that. They're planning to have 8 dealers and 100 service centers in operation nationwide within about a year from now. This seems like a really interesting van. Mm-hmm. It's got a 71 kilowatt-hour battery pack, 521 kilometers of range. Kia is doing some great things with their EVs and, looking to crack that Japanese market.
Sounds like it's a business, a fleet thing.
Yeah.
There's maybe the fleets will go for it because it's economic and you save money on the long run. You look at your bottom line, you look at the accountant's notes, and you proceed as accordingly.
Yes, and there was another story this week that Amazon is finally bringing its electric vans to Canada here. Those are made by Rivian. Amazon is a partner in Rivian, and of course Rivian has started making those cool Amazon delivery vans that have been on the roads for a couple of years in the U.S. They're finally expanding those to Canada, which is, always interesting.
Well, we've got a letter from Bob, Bob 2.
Oh, it's Bob 2. I need you to specify which Bob.
Yes. Yeah, we have multiple Bobs that have written in. God knows how many Bobs listen to the show who are waiting to write in, maybe now is your time and you could be Bob 3. You better write in now because you could be Bob 4 or 5 if you wait too long.
Bob 3 is open if anyone wants to get in touch. So yes, Bob 2 sent us a note about the Chinese automaker Chery, and this is an article from Popular Mechanics magazine, and this is about solid-state batteries, and news about solid-state batteries has been ramping up a little bit in recent times, and solid-state batteries, as we've talked about, have the potential to be better in many different ways, and this is explained in this Popular Mechanics article here, and Bob 2 clipped out a few sort of paragraphs from the article here. Solid-state batteries are the next quantum leap for EVs, unlocking more range, performance, and longevity. Chery Automobile's prototype battery boasts 600 watt-hours per kilogram of energy density, double the energy density of most current EV batteries. That's great news. Chery's new battery is also puncture-resistant, significantly reducing the risk of fire should any of the cells be damaged. And of course, that is a big problem with wet, non-solid-state batteries. They can catch on fire if they're punctured. 800-mile EV batteries have been promised. Chery, by the way, exported over 1 million cars this year. And this is a car company that I think we've ever even talked about here on the show, but they're really cranking out the work there. So yeah, there was other news. Toyota apparently is very close to sort of finalizing their solid-state battery that they've been talking about for years. I think Nissan as well. So yeah, it seems like it's finally happening, although, I think cautious optimism is always good. I kind of expected solid-state batteries closer to 2030. And since, none of these is really fully in production yet, but yeah, maybe it'll be a little bit earlier than 2030.
And there's the question of cost, initial cost too. Things that are new tend to cost higher, and they're anticipated to be costing higher. Energy density is important for flight. If you have electric vertical takeoff aircraft that they have, these flying drones with people in them, or electric airplanes, that's important too. So that would be a huge thing with that energy density. That's the amount of, electricity you can fit into volume and weight, which is what we talk about when we talk about density, energy density. So 800 miles, that's like almost 1,300 kilometers. That's too much. It's too much.
Too much, yeah.
You don't need that much. It's pointless to carry that around with you for, your bladder better be made of steel if you're going to go 1,300 kilometers without stopping for a short charge. Yeah, and by the way, they exported 1 million cars.
Yeah.
Chery did.
Crazy.
That's a lot of cars.
Crazy.
We don't talk about them often. We do mention them from time to time, but BYD gets a lot of attention, and so do, some of the other automakers from China, but that's a lot, especially when most of them are new energy vehicles. If you'd like to contact us about anything at all, drop us an email at cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. That's all one word, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. You can also leave us a voicemail online or a little voice note on your phone if you want, attach it to an email. But you can go to speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. And if you're nervous about screwing up, you can redo it 1,000 times if you want. Yeah. It doesn't matter. No problem there. The Clean Energy Show is an independent podcast made possible by listeners like you who support us on Patreon. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. You'll be getting a shout out at the end of the show. And support this podcast for a little $1 a month. Doing so gets you perks like our monthly bonus episode for Clean Club members. That's coming up in a couple of days. And as we celebrate our first year of Patreon, we will release this month's bonus episode to all our Patreon members, including our free members. So if you want to check out what our bonus podcast sounds like for free, all you have to do is sign up for a free Patreon account. You don't have to support us financially to get that episode this month. Just go to our Patreon page later this week, patreon.com/cleanenergyshow, and I will be talking about the new Netflix climate documentary, The White House Effect, which got me riled and depressed and educated. As, sometimes you forget about what the history of the climate is, even though I lived it.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about recent history, going back to even 2015 was kind of educational there. But I will also be making a major medical announcement that you won't want to miss. And no, I'm not dying. Well, I am. We're all dying, but slowly. Coming up next is the lightning round. It's time for the lightning round.
The Lightning Round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
On Monday, Waymo announced its self-driving cars will hit 3 more cities in 2026: San Diego, Detroit, snowy Detroit, and Las Vegas. Seen some clips on their social media about snow testing, because everybody around here, where it snows in Canada, thinks, oh, those self-driving cars, maybe they'll work in Las Vegas, but not here. That would bring the total to 12 operational U.S. cities by the end of next year, and they may not be done yet. They also plan to launch in Miami, Dallas, Washington, D.C., Nashville, and London, England, London, UK, which would be the first international expansion.
Interesting.
Doesn't snow in London, though. Not very often, anyway.
Not very often, but it does.
It's just a sprinkle. It's a dusting, really.
Sure.
It's not like you're up to your knees or anything. Hyundai's battery electric EV sales, battery electric car sales, grew 47% globally year on year.
Wow.
So far, which is pretty significant. I knew they made great cars.
Yeah.
And they were making more than other people early on a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't feel like they were really committed to the cause. But now they are, because people are understanding that their cars are pretty great and they're pretty good value. And, they're really taking off now. Battery energy storage development in Australia's power sector, it surged 150% year on year. So again, Australia, more solar you have, the more battery storage for the grid that you might want to have for the power grid, and store that and expand it into the night, dispense it when the sun's not shining. 150% is pretty big growth. So that's really taking off. And of course, when that happens, that makes it cheaper for everyone else, because the more you sell, the more you make.
They've got too much solar, but hey, that is not a bad problem. That is a good problem, and they're just figuring out how to deal with it.
That is from Energy Storage News. It is time for a CS Fast Fact. 36.2 million people around the world are now employed in the clean energy industry, outnumbering those employed in oil, gas, coal, and other fossil fuel industries, which is only 32.1 million. So, and decreasing as they become more mechanized in oil and gas, and increasing as we expand clean energy. In China, India, the European Union, and the United States, clean energy investment now outweighs fossil fuel spending at a ratio of $2.6 to every $1. So double what it was in 2015.
Yeah.
Also expanding quickly. Illinois lawmakers passed the Clean and Reliable Grid Affordability Act. Again, getting back to renewables, mean cheap electricity. That's how you should market it to your constituents. Boosting battery storage in Illinois. Energy efficiency, which is a big part of the energy transition, is making things more efficient and using less energy. And virtual power plants, which I love, which means a battery or an EV in your home gets to be connected to the grid by software, and when they need a little bit of it, it goes into the grid, and that saves the grid money and pays you a little bit of money. More money than probably the retail rate of electricity in most cases. And well over half of new car sales in China are electric. In 2020, Brian, it was 6% when we started this podcast. So It's now like well over 50%.
In 5 years, from 6% to 50% in China. That's remarkable.
The American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy released its annual International Energy Efficiency Scorecard, which ranks countries on their energy efficiency policies and performance. And guess what? France is the most energy efficient country. Why? Because of its low industrial energy intensity. So the they use less energy for their industry there. Stringent fuel economy standards, which we know, and other ambitious policies. Further, France has building codes that require energy efficiency upgrades during residential and commercial building renovations. So if you renovate a home or a commercial property, you have to upgrade the efficiency, which is a good idea.
Something I hadn't heard of before, but sure, if you need to do some kind of construction, you often need to apply for a permit, and then at that point, they can stop you and say, hey, you got to add some energy efficiency into that plan. That's really cool.
But don't worry, because the government provides some financial incentives for those energy upgrades. That's from the dailyenergyinsider.com. Renewables are now cheaper than new coal power in India. So India, huge increase in their energy needs there.
Yeah.
because the rapid expansion to middle class, they are the country, the big, massive country. They're the new China, essentially. And, of course, you want to rely on coal to get that out as fast as possible sometimes. But new coal, if you build new coal, it's $68 per megawatt hour, US dollars. But solar and storage, solar and batteries, usually batteries, is $33 to $41. So it's significantly cheaper.
Yeah.
If you're building coal in India, you're a fool. It's not working out. It's not working out financially. So U.S. rooftop solar, we've said this before on the show. I'm going to repeat it again here. U.S. rooftop solar costs 7 times more than it does in Australia. We should call this the Australian episode.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Well, 7 times more, and 2.8 times, almost 3 times more than it is in Germany. Why is that? There's soft costs like permitting. So if you get solar, you got to go through all this red tape.
Yeah.
Okay? And that costs money. And it costs the company who is doing it money because you have to sit around, wait for the permits and pay people. And inspections and interconnections are 78%. So the permitting, the red tape, the inspection of the finished solar roof on your house or whatever, and the interconnection to the grid costs more here. 78% of the U.S. rooftop solar is that stuff. It's not the solar panels and the inverter, it's that stuff.
Yes, and we know from listening to this show that many years ago, Australia went hard and they reduced a lot of these red tape costs and barriers, and that's why their solar on roofs is booming.
And if you're new to the show, you may be surprised to hear that 1 in 3 rooftops in Australia has solar, even more than that now. It's probably going to hit 40% at some point.
Yeah.
Rising heat kills 1 person a minute on the planet. 1 person a minute. Major report reveals. I guess it's going to get worse, Brian. It's not going to get better. It's,
Yeah.
How long have we been talking? 50 minutes? Well, that's 50 people because of heat. India, in April 2025, coal ramped down to 52. It went down 52 gigawatts less than it was in 6 hours as midday solar reached 60 gigawatts. So they shut 52 gigawatts of coal down during the middle of the day because solar was pumping 60 gigawatts into the grid, 60 nuclear reactors worth. That was up 41% compared to the previous April. And so that's what happens.
Yeah.
You put up solar panels, which is cheap and free. The coal gets turned off. Maybe you don't get rid of the coal just yet during the transition, but you can at least turn it down, which is what we could be doing here. And the government refuses to do that. And finally this week, China's consumption of transport fuels, gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel fell 4% year on year in the January to September period. Over the previous period of that last year, they report it is due to the impact of alternative energy, for example, EVs. The rate of decline is increasing from 3.6% drop in H1. So as we go along in different periods, it's getting a higher rate of drop.
Yeah, an important point in this too, as China is now at 50% of new car sales being electric, is you got to remember this is not a normal country. This is a massive country with over 1 billion people. This is a massive, massive automotive market. So the quicker that you can switch that market to EVs, the better the outcome is going to be for the environment. And on that optimistic note, that is our show for this week. You can find us on social media at Clean Energy Pod. Our Patreon is patreon.com/cleanenergypod. Our email, if you want to contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. And remember to hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to this podcast.
And this being the first show of the month, we give a shout out to certain levels of our Patreon supporters. But at this point, I would also like to thank the people who don't get a shout out, who support us for a less financial amount every month. We really appreciate you, and I hope that you are enjoying your Patreon membership. Clean Club executive members, Green Bastard, Brett Rowley, Clean Club Plus, Bob Armstrong, John Hayes, and Wes S. And our Clean Club, Noah Cook, Denny and Linda, Jonathan Dick, Bob Eaton, Josh Engen, Sean Ennis, Andy Fessler, Roshan Gervais, H., Sean Hines, Timo Kellenberger, Peter O'Donnell, Weldon Penner, Robu, Joe Thorshine, Landon U, and Richard W. And we're getting so many that at some point, I'm just going to need a robot to read those because I'm going to run out of energy.
And when you support us on Patreon, you can have the thrill of having us mispronounce your name when we read up these names.
If I have mispronounced, please send us an email and let us know, or drop us a line on Patreon on the page. Thank you to all who are supporting our podcast. We'll see you again in 7 days. No, we'll see you for a bonus podcast in a few days.
Yeah, see you in a few days.